to another video. So I was going to do this video for a friend of mine who's getting into software engineering, but then I thought it might serve the greater tech community. So I decided to generalize it and do it for all of you. So we're going to be looking at you have a project on your computer and you want to host it on GitHub. You want to create a GitHub repository for your project. So we're going to cover that. And then we're also going to cover the scenario where maybe you have a project on GitHub that maybe you forked from someone else's repository and you want to download that locally to your local machine so you can work on it locally. So we're going to cover basically both directions, right? Local to GitHub and GitHub to local, all right? So here I am on my desktop, and let me move my head, and I'm just going to create a facetious directory. I'm going to call it local to GitHub, all right? And so create that, and then I'm going to cd into that directory, and I'm going to create, let's just create an index.html. All right. So this is a dummy folder, a dummy project, basically. All right. So we're going to create that file, and then let's go into that file in my editor. And this is our index.html here. And I need to change the type down here to HTML so we can get the highlighting right, okay? And let's just create a heading, and we're going to call it dummy project, all right? And if we went ahead and opened that in our browser, we would, oh, there's a typo. Oh, there we go. Okay. I was like, why didn't it pick up the type just from the get? Okay. All right. So we save that and we can open that in our browser and we see dummy project. All right. So we're good. So we have that project locally, right? So you have your local project, obviously more complex than what I have over here. How do we get it to GitHub, right? So the first thing we want to make sure is we have initialized a Git repository in this directory, all right? So it's a plain directory right now, but it's a directory that doesn't have Git, that is not configured with Git. And so we want to initialize a Git repository. We basically want to create a Git repository within this directory. And we do that by running the command git init. Now, if you don't have Git on your system, just search the internet. I'm using a Mac, and so you can just search install Git on Mac and you can see the instructions. So we run git init. And we see this output, initialized empty Git repository in this directory, in our directory. And if we do an ls-al, we see this hidden folder here, and that lets us know that a Git has been initialized in this directory. And so what this does is it's created a local Git repository. Now this is an actual Git repository. It's local, right? And so the point is we then want to push it, up to GitHub. And so we have a copy of this on GitHub. All right. And so we've done that, and then we go through, this video isn't covering this, but we basically create our, we create our commit, and that will allow us to push the commit up to GitHub. And so we run our Git, we can run Git status, and that shows us kind of what's going on. So it tells us we have an untracked file, and what that means is Git hasn't, doesn't recognize this file yet. And so we want to stage that file by running git add. In this case, we can run the actual file, or you can run git add dot, and that adds everything that's untracked or unchanged. And if we run git status again, we see that we have a new status. It's telling us changes to be committed, and it tells us it's this new file. And so we commit the changes that we have staged, we commit them. And so we run git commit, and it's good to write a commit message, and the message is going to be initial commit. All right. And so here we see a summary of the commit. And so we see, we have one file changed, 3 insertions, and that's just summarizing, the changes that have been committed, right? And we see the file that the changes have been made in. You notice now that we have this, and this may not be the case. I have my terminal configured to show the branch that I'm on in a local Git repository. This may not be exactly the case with your situation, but typically you will see the branch that you're on. So right now I am on master branch, right? All right. So let's now go to our GitHub, and we are going to basically work on the other side of this hookup. So we've worked on the local side, and now we need to work on the GitHub side. All right. So let's go to GitHub. So this is my GitHub page, and this is a list of my repositories that I have currently. And so what we want to do is we want to say new, right? And so we only have a repository locally. Now we want a copy of it or a version of it on GitHub. And so we say new, and we're going to give it the same name, local to GitHub, right? And you want to make sure it's available. And we're going to make it public. That's fine. You can make it private if you want. We're going to skip these options right here, not necessary for what we're doing. And so we say create repository. All right. Okay. So it gives us some instructions. It says, it gives us a quick setup. We're going to go through that. This is if we are creating, a new repository, or if we're pushing an existing. So this is what applies to us, right? So for our flow, for what we're doing right now, we're going to be pushing an existing repository from the command line. So let's go ahead and do that. And it's given us three commands to run on our terminal in order to accomplish that, right? Now, I do want to point out that in these commands here, the branch name is main, because GitHub has moved from calling the source of truth branch. We don't call it master anymore. We call it main. So what I'm going to do locally is I'm going to change the name of my master branch to main, because the branch name needs to be the same. So let's do that first before we run those 3 commands that we see there. All right. So I believe the command is git branch dash m. Let me do a dash help and see. All right. So git branch. Let's see. I think it's a dash M. Yes, I think is the flag that I pass. So git branch dash M, and I'm going to call it main. Yes. Okay. So we see that the branch name has been changed. So let's go and grab those 3 commands and run them locally. So, and I'm going to explain what each command is doing. All right. So this command, I'm going to paste it. So what we're doing here is this part of the command is the address of our repository on Git. That's the address of our repository on Git, on GitHub, I should say. So git@github.com :Miss Arit, which is my GitHub username, / the name of the repository on GitHub. So that's like an address. Now the command is saying git remote add origin and then the address. Now what this is doing is it is adding what is called a remote repository to our local repository. And so think of it as if your local repository is your home address. Okay, and let's assume you have some kind of board in your kitchen, and on that board you write the addresses of all your family members. And so your mother's address is on there, your sister's address, for example, your cousin's address, and you write everyone's address out so you have easy reference to your family addresses. That is what is happening here. By running this command, we are adding the address for the GitHub repository that is like that is like the GitHub version of our local repository. And so let's run the command, and then I'll show you what it did. And so git remote add is saying we want to add a remote repository, and we are giving it the name origin. You don't have to call it origin. You can call it whatever you want, but by convention, we call it origin. All right. And so, and then this is the address. And so let's run the command. Okay, nothing happens. It ran. Now, if you want to see a list of your remote repositories, you run git remote -v. And this tells me that I have a remote repository on GitHub. And so it's telling us that we have this remote repository on GitHub called origin, and it gives us the address. And we see it repeated twice because there are two actions basically that you can perform against this repository. There's the fetch action, which fetches any changes that have been made in the GitHub repository down to your local, and you have the push action, which you can push changes you've made locally to the repository on GitHub. And we're going to go through all of that. All right. And so now we have added our repository. So let's go back to GitHub. This was renaming. Oh, this command here was to rename the branch to main, because GitHub realizes that people may still have master branches locally. And so this is renaming the branch name to main, and we've already done that. All right. So the next command to run is now the push command. So remember when I said that we have two actions that we can run against our GitHub repository, our origin repository, fetch and push. So we are about now to run the push action. And so we have git push. The -u is talking about we are pushing this to origin, right? And the branch we are pushing is main branch. All right. We're pushing to origin, which is our GitHub version of the repository, and we are pushing the main branch. And so we run this command, and it runs. Now, I do want to say something, because some of you may run into an error here, and the error may be along the lines of you are not authorized to push to the branch. And that might be because you have not configured your GitHub user on your local computer, in your terminal. Okay, so we have pushed our local main to GitHub. So let's go and check it out. And so if we come, so you can see here, this is us, and this is our GitHub repository. And if we click on that link, we come to this tab, the code tab, and you see this is our file, and it's on GitHub, and we see the commit message, which was initial commit. That's it. And so let me go through a flow where I make a change. So I'm going to make a change to this file. So I am going to update this file, and I'm going to say random update message. All right. So I have updated my local file, index.html. So I come to my local repository in terminal, and I run git status, and git status will tell me that I have some changes that are not staged for commit, and the changes were in this file. And so what I need to do is I need to run git add index.html, and that will stage the file, the changes in the file. And then I run git status again, and it tells me I have changes now to be committed in that file. So then I run git commit -m, and I type added sentence. Okay. And then I run, this time I have already run this push command that specified which repository in GitHub I'm pushing to and which branch. So I don't have to run the whole thing again because it's kind of already made a hookup, all right, between my local repository and GitHub. So I just need to run Git Push this time. And it already knows where it's pushing to because I specified that the first time I ran Git Push. So let's go to our GitHub repository and refresh. And we see that the commit message has changed. It's updated to the latest one. And if we look in the file, we should see everything that we've added. All right. So that is the hookup from local to GitHub. Now let's cover the reverse, right? And this is important for, let's say you fork someone's repository. So now you forked it to your GitHub account, but now you want the copy of it locally so you can actually work on it locally. All right. So let's do that. I need to think of a repository to fork. What better one than I think I can do this because I will be doing it to desktop. All right, so let's go to my company forum. We are completely open source, so this is kosher. So this is the forum repository here. And so let's assume that this is a repository for maybe a project you're working on, a tutorial that you are taking, and they provide you with a repository and they say you can fork it and so you can work on it locally. And so the way you fork a repository is you come here to the fork button. And what this does is it copies this person's repository. It copies it to your GitHub account. So right now this repository is under the forum GitHub account, but I want a copy in my GitHub account. And so I come here and I say fork, and it tells me, oh, that's right, I've already forked forum because I work on forum. Let me think, let me search for one. Let's see, JavaScript 30. Let's search all of GitHub. Okay, so this is Wes Boss's course, JavaScript 30, and I know I don't have this on this laptop. So this is the JavaScript 30 course by Wes Boss, the repository rather, and I'm going to fork this and then I'm going to clone it to my local machine. And so we're going from GitHub to local. So let's go ahead and fork it. All right. So it asks me, where should we fork JavaScript 30? And I have a number of organizations. I want it to my personal GitHub, which is Miss Arid right here. So I choose this, and now it's forking the JavaScript 30 repository. And if you see it, I'm back in my GitHub account, and this is my copy or my fork of the JavaScript 30 repository, and it actually tells me where it was forked from, which is helpful. All right. And so now I have this repository and it is in my GitHub account, but it only is in my GitHub. It's not local. I don't have it locally, and I would like to have it locally. And so the way you do that is you come up to code and you make sure that you are on the SSH tab. Now this is the address. All right. So remember the address to a repository. This is the address to this repository in my GitHub account. So I want to copy this. I want to copy this address. OK, then we come locally and I need to go to where I want to clone this repository. That's what it's called. When you are copying a repository from GitHub to your local, you are cloning it. And so I want to CD back into my desktop. I want to make sure that, or wherever you choose to put this, I want to put it in my desktop. And so I am now located in my desktop. And what you do is you say git clone, and then you paste the address that you copied from GitHub. All right. You paste the address. And so git clone and then the address to the JavaScript repository in my GitHub. And I say enter. And that is cloning the entire repository locally. So now I have my local version or my local a copy of the GitHub repository. All right. So if I can then change directory into that. Okay. So now I am here. Now you see it's back to master. The branch is master. And if you check the GitHub repository source of truth branch is also called master. We could change it if we wanted to, but I'm just going to leave it the way it is. So now we've connected the GitHub to the local, right? So let's go ahead and make some changes and push them up and see that we have connected the two. So I am not sure what is in here. Let's open it in our code editor, and VS Code don't allow. Okay, so let's open the first, I guess the first, the first directory right there. I just want to find something to change. Okay, so this is, I just want to find something to change. Okay, this is finished. Okay, I'm just going to I'm going to change the start.html, and I'm just going to add something, just adding something. All right, something that we can see when we push it up to GitHub. So I made a change to this file. So let me go back to my terminal and I run git status. All right, and it tells me I have some changes not staged for commit, and it tells me the file. So I do a git add, and I'm just gonna do a 01. Okay, and it completed it for me, and then I'm going to indicate it's the index start. Okay, and I'm using tab to complete. I'm not typing everything out. All right, so and this is not always recommended, but you can just run git add dot, and what the dot means is everything that has changed in the present directory, add it, stage it for commit. All right, and so we run our git status again, and we see that we have changes to be committed, and so we commit the change, git commit -m, and I'm just going to say random change. All right, and now we have staged our changed files we have committed our changed files. Now we can let's run git push. All right, because we're pushing now the changes up. So we run git push, and it pushes up because we've already connected them, right? When we cloned the repository from GitHub, we connected them. Okay, so if we go back to our GitHub repository and refresh, we should see that the commit message for the JavaScript drum kit folder has changed because we just updated that. And if we open that and open the index-start, we see our change right there. So I took my time with this video because I wanted to really step-by-step explain how we incorporate using GitHub repositories for our local projects. We talked about you have an existing local project, you don't have a GitHub repository for it. How do you set that up? And we also covered you have a GitHub repository, either it's yours or you forked it from someone else's repository. How do you clone that locally so you can start working on it locally? So we have covered these two methods in this video. I hope it was helpful. If you have any feedback on the content of this video, please leave a comment below, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Thank you.